My name is Kennedy Sullivan, 31 years old, the middle child of the Sullivan family, the owners of Sullivan Tech Solutions, a long-standing software company in Chicago. Outsiders often think we are the model family. A 3-story red brick mansion, a backyard half the size of a football field, and a garage that fits 4 luxury cars. But inside those walls, the truth is entirely different. My father, Richard Sullivan, only worships one person, my older brother. Ethan, 37, has never been good at technology or management. In college, he changed his major 3 times and finally scraped by with a degree in communications. Yet the moment he graduated, my father handed him the title of Vice President of Sales. He knows nothing about programming systems or product strategy, but the moment he sits in a boardroom, Dad hangs on his every word, nodding like he's in the presence of a genius. I've seen Ethan show up to the office drunk or leave meetings halfway through to play golf, and still my father proudly calls him the rightful heir. My younger sister, Chloe, 28, doesn't care about the company at all. She chose to become a lifestyle influencer, constantly posting pictures of shopping trips, spa days, and glamorous parties on Instagram. Chloe lives off the Sullivan name, flaunting her title as the founder's daughter to hundreds of thousands of followers. In every post, she tags Sullivan Tech as if she had helped build it, when in reality she's never stepped foot in the office except to take staged photos. My father doesn't mind. He just smiles and says Chloe is maintaining the family image in the public eye. And then there's me, Kennedy, the invisible one. From a young age, I was obsessed with computers. At 13, I taught myself coding. At 16, I built my first application. Later, I was admitted to MIT, double majoring in computer science and business management, and graduated among the top of my class. I came back determined to contribute to the family company, to bring fresh ideas that would push Sullivan Tech forward into the cloud era. But to my father, none of that mattered. At family meetings, whenever Ethan rambled about expanding market vision, which was nothing more than empty slogans, Dad nodded with admiration. But whenever I tried to share real solutions or long-term strategies, he would cut me off with that same dismissive smile. That's nice, Kennedy. But you don't fully understand how a major company operates. Let Ethan and me handle the real business. Those words cut me like a blade. I had studied endlessly, prepared every chart and figure meticulously, yet I was always reduced to the dreamer child. My father even once looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're great at theory, but in the real world, clients want stability, not lofty ideas." Even my mother, Linda, who came from an old Boston family, never stood by me. She was used to playing the peacemaker, choosing silence over confrontation. Occasionally she'd murmur, "Richard, maybe you should let Kennedy present her idea." But the moment Dad frowned, she would fall quiet and change the subject to wine, travel, or the weather. And so, at every dinner, every vacation, every holiday gathering, I sat at the edge of the table listening to my father and brother discuss contracts, while Chloe bragged about her growing Instagram following. Meanwhile, I, the only one who truly understood and loved technology, was kept on the outside of the very company my grandfather had poured his life into. I remember one winter evening in the grand dining room under the blazing chandelier. My father raised his glass to toast Ethan for securing a major client. I knew that deal had nothing to do with him. It was the technical team's months of work. I parted my lips to speak, but Dad shot me a warning look to stay silent. Ethan grinned, raised his glass higher, and the whole room erupted in applause. I sat there, my hands clenched, biting my lip to hide the bitterness rising in my chest. That night, I realized one thing. In the Sullivan family, my worth would never be recognized. I was not the celebrated child, not the face of the brand. I was nothing more than a shadow in the very house I grew up in. I still remember that morning as if it were yesterday, the day every last hope I had for the Sullivan family crumbled. I was 23, barely a year out of MIT, carrying all the excitement and conviction that I could help usher Sullivan Tech Solutions into a new era. I had spent months preparing for a board meeting where my father and the longtime members would hear my proposal for a cloud integration platform I had developed. The boardroom was vast, oak-paneled, with a glossy table stretching the length of the room. The walls were covered with framed awards and photos of my father posing with politicians, faces he loved to brag about. I walked in with my laptop and a thick business plan, my heart pounding but my eyes steady with determination. I thought finally, this was my chance to prove I wasn't just the dreamer child. When I began, a few members nodded along. I spoke about the growing shift of enterprises to the cloud, the need to bridge old systems with new technology, and how Sullivan Tech could lead the market for at least 5 years if we moved first. I laid out growth forecasts, profit models, and a product roadmap. Every detail was polished. No question could have caught me off guard. But only 10 minutes in, my father, Richard Sullivan, sitting at the head of the table, arms folded, sighed loudly. He raised a hand to cut me off, then with a thin smile said loud enough for all to hear, "Enough, Kennedy. Your idea is interesting, sure, but completely unrealistic. Our clients don't want to gamble on fancy new tech. They want stability, not some lab experiment." His words stabbed straight through me like a cold blade. Silence fell over the room. A few members avoided my eyes, others smirked faintly. My father turned to them with a shrug and that condescending tone. "You see, my daughter just graduated. Her head is still full of classroom theory. Let's get back to real business." Polite chuckles rippled around the table. My face burned as I gathered my materials with trembling hands. To him, all my sleepless nights, every number, every line of code were reduced to one word: naive. I swallowed back tears, bowed my head, and walked out as their laughter filled the air as if I had never even been there. That night, in my room at the Sullivan Mansion, I stared at the plaques and awards on my walls, symbols of years of effort, that suddenly felt meaningless. Downstairs, I heard my father chatting happily with Ethan about a weekend golf trip and a new business strategy I knew was just empty talk. No one mentioned me. No one cared about the humiliation I had endured. At that moment I realized, if I stayed in Chicago, I would forever remain a shadow, pushed aside from both family and company. They would never see who I truly was or what I could do. I opened my drawer and pulled out the savings I had scraped together from part-time jobs during school. Just $5,000. Pitiful compared to my family's luxury, but everything I had to my name. I stuffed the cash into a duffel bag along with a few clothes, my laptop, and a notebook of ideas. The next morning, while the household bustled with preparations for a weekend party, I quietly rolled my suitcase out the door. No goodbyes, no one to see me off. I booked a budget flight to San Francisco, the city I knew as the beating heart of technology dreams. Squeezed into an economy seat, my small bag at my feet, I felt both terrified and exhilarated. Terrified because my future was a blank page. Exhilarated because for the first time, I wasn't buried beneath my brother's shadow or my father's contempt. I swore to myself then, I would build something with my own hands and mind. One day the Sullivan family would have no choice but to acknowledge my worth, whether they wanted to or not. As the plane lifted, I looked out the window at Chicago's skyline fading behind me. A fire sparked in my chest. I didn't know whether I would fail or succeed, but one thing was certain. I would never return with empty hands and downcast eyes like the night before. San Francisco was waiting, and with it, the chance to rewrite my entire life. San Francisco didn't greet me with the glitter of tech success, but with a chill that seeped into my skin and the loneliness of someone starting out with almost nothing. I rented a shabby room on the 3rd floor of an old apartment building in the Mission District. The room barely fit a single bed, a wobbly wooden desk, and a tiny kitchenette with a leaky sink. Every month, more than half my cash disappeared on rent. The rest stretched thin across instant noodles, cheap cereal, and instant coffee. In those early days, I took on any programming work I could find for small companies, building sales apps for local shops, debugging systems for startups that didn't even survive the year. I accepted every job no matter how little it paid, just for the chance to learn. Some weeks I worked as many as 80 hours, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, my wrists aching from endless typing. But I never dared complain. I knew each line of code, every tiny contract was a brick in the foundation of my future. Every night I clutched my laptop, sitting on the floor because the desk was too low and unstable, scribbling out new ideas. I told myself, if my father once dismissed cloud technology as a fantasy, then I would turn that fantasy into something the whole market couldn't ignore. I began building a data integration platform that allowed outdated business systems to communicate seamlessly with modern cloud services, the very concept Richard had once ridiculed. After 2 relentless years, I had built enough experience and scraped together enough savings to bring on 2 partners. One was Alex, a sharp-minded business strategist I had worked with on a freelance project. The other was Renee, a brilliant software engineer tired of being sidelined at big corporations. The three of us crammed into my apartment, transforming the living room into a makeshift office with folding tables, a whiteboard, and tangled power cords. I knew if I used the name Kennedy Sullivan, people would instantly connect me to Chicago's wealthy Sullivan family. I didn't want my success written off as luck or privilege. So I chose the alias M. Stone, short for Kennedy Marie Stone. A name both familiar and untraceable. We called the little company Everest Solutions. The name came to me during a sleepless night. Conquering Everest felt impossible, just like proving my worth after being cast aside by my family. Every line of code, every demo was another step up that massive mountain. In our third year, a miracle arrived. A logistics company in Oakland was in crisis. Their old systems couldn't sync with the cloud platform they had just purchased. Desperate, they stumbled upon our demo. I'll never forget the moment their director ran the program and watched the data flow seamlessly before his eyes. The look of astonishment on his face was the first real recognition I had craved for years. That contract lit the spark. Soon more companies came knocking. First small and mid-sized businesses, then larger corporations. My team and I worked tirelessly, reinvesting every cent of profit into hiring more staff and upgrading our space. I no longer had to work from that cramped apartment. We moved into an office in Soma, the beating heart of startups and bold dreams. There were nights I thought I'd collapse under the pressure. Some days I slept only 3 hours, so drained I'd nod off at the keyboard. But every time I remembered Richard's dismissive stare or the board's mocking laughter, I clenched my fists and kept going. By the 5th year, Everest had grown to more than 30 employees, many of them defectors from tech giants who believed in our vision. They trusted in the technology we were building. Our second-generation integration platform was hailed by a California tech magazine as the bridge between the past and the future of American enterprise. That article was our first milestone in the spotlight. I sat in my modest office, gazing out through the window at the San Francisco Bay glittering under the night lights, and felt a lump rise in my throat. 10 years after leaving Chicago with only $5,000, the name Everest Solutions had become a true force in American tech. From a cramped office in Soma, we expanded to Los Angeles, then Seattle, and finally established our headquarters in downtown San Francisco. The team that once had just 3 people had grown past 200, each a talented professional willing to sacrifice to follow the vision I had laid out. Last year, an independent investment firm valued Everest at $200 million. I remember clearly the morning that financial report was released. Renee burst into my office, eyes wide with excitement, exclaiming, "Ken, we did it! Everest officially passed the 200 million mark." I only smiled, tapping my coffee cup lightly. Pride surged inside me, but instead of loud celebration, I felt a quiet certainty. All the hardships of the past had finally been validated by the numbers. Yet there was one truth I still held close. The Sullivan family knew nothing about this success. In the rare phone calls with my mother, I only said I was working steadily, trying out a small project. My father, Richard, never asked more. In his eyes, I had vanished from the professional world the day I walked out of that boardroom. And I chose to let him keep believing it. I remained hidden behind the name M. Stone in every deal. The tech industry knew me only as a secretive founder, rarely appearing in public, always letting the COO or CFO speak on my behalf. Even when I was forced to attend, I altered my style, applied subtle makeup, and kept my words to a minimum. Kennedy Sullivan, the overlooked daughter, existed only in Chicago's memory. Stone was the CEO they saw. Once Everest stood on solid ground, I began crafting another plan, one no Sullivan could ever imagine me capable of. Moving in on Sullivan Tech itself. I knew my father's company was faltering. The market had shifted, but Richard clung to his outdated philosophy. Major clients drifted away while Ethan, my brother, lived extravagantly off the company, adding no value. I quietly tracked public financial reports, leaked internal memos. All signs pointed to a ship slowly sinking. I began buying shares from the satellite firms around Sullivan Tech. First, a software vendor in Dallas, then a data infrastructure partner in Denver. I never appeared personally. Every purchase flowed through Everest subsidiaries. Within months, Everest controlled much of the supply chain Sullivan Tech relied on. The next step was clients. I sent Alex to lead a negotiation team, approaching each major partner of Sullivan Tech with solutions that were sharper, cheaper, and faster. Companies that had been loyal to Richard for decades were forced to switch, because Everest technology simply outperformed. One quiet night in our San Francisco office, I stood before a giant strategy map pinned to the wall. Each company, each client, each link in Sullivan Tech's ecosystem was slowly shaded into Everest's control. I placed the final red mark, feeling as though I had just pulled another chair leg out from under my father. What surprised me most was what I felt. Not glee, not the thrill of revenge. Instead, a cold calm. I was no longer the girl crying in the boardroom. I was a businesswoman who knew exactly what she wanted, and how to get it. Late one night, my phone rang. It was my mother, Linda. Her voice was hazy with wine, but her worry was clear. Ken, the company really is in trouble. Your father says he may have to sell off shares. Are you doing okay out there? I bit my lip, holding back the truth. I'm fine, Mom. Just working on the usual. Don't worry. Your father, he's been so irritable. He won't listen to anyone. Not even Ethan can help. I went silent for a moment before changing the subject, careful not to raise suspicion. After hanging up, I stared at the contract glowing on my laptop screen. It was the deal that would give Everest full control of one of Sullivan Tech's biggest clients. I knew the day I would face my family was drawing near. This time, not as the nervous daughter silenced mid-sentence, but as the woman holding the power to alter the fate of their empire. One question echoed inside me. When the truth came out, would they be astonished, or completely shattered? I didn't know the answer, but I was certain of one thing. When that moment came, every eye would be forced to turn to me, Kennedy Sullivan, or rather Stone, the woman they had once dismissed. 11 years after I left Chicago, my private jet touched down at O'Hare on a freezing November morning. I rarely used private planes, but this time I wanted my arrival to carry a different weight. A driver in a black Bentley waited outside, taking me through familiar streets back to the family estate in Lake Forest. Every faded maple tree, every iron gate dusted with frost stirred memories of childhood, but my heart no longer lingered there. I wasn't the sidelined girl anymore. I was returning as the woman who built her own empire, and tonight the truth would come out. My mother, Linda, greeted me at the door. Her eyes lingered on my soft leather coat, my Bottega Veneta bag, and my Louboutin heels. I smiled lightly. Hi, Mom. It's been a while. She hugged me, the scent of Chanel mingling with the familiar trace of wine. You look so different. You must be doing well. I only answered softly, I'm fine. Thank you. Inside, my brother Ethan was already in the living room, whiskey glass in hand. He raised an eyebrow, smirking. Well, Kennedy's back. Heard you're still coding those little apps. I set my bag down, gaze indifferent. Something like that. And you? How's the company? He cleared his throat, dodged the question, then quickly flashed his new gold watch. My sister, Chloe, came down the stairs holding her phone on live stream. Oh my God, everyone, my sister's home. Doesn't she look so fancy? Probably has some rich boyfriend sponsoring her. I gave a faint smile and stepped out of her frame. My father, Richard Sullivan, emerged from his study with that same aura of authority. He only nodded. Kennedy. No hug, no question. In his eyes, I was still the faint shadow. But I knew in just a few hours he would face something he had never imagined. That evening, the family gathered in the grand dining room. The long walnut table was draped in white linen, crystal chandeliers sparkling above fine Wedgwood china. The scent of roast turkey filled the room. I was seated near the far end, away from my father's head chair, while Ethan sat proudly beside him like the heir apparent. As dinner drew to a close, Richard tapped his knife against a crystal glass, his voice booming. I have an important announcement. Sullivan Tech will officially be sold for $50 million to a technology investment firm. The deal closes tomorrow. Ethan froze, dropping his spoon. Dad, what are you saying? This company belongs to the family. I've given over a decade to it. Chloe gasped, her voice cracking. What about my online brand? I've always called myself the daughter of Sullivan Tech. You're going to ruin that. My father raised his hand to silence them. You must understand, this is the best decision. The company needs change. The buyer is highly reputable and has promised to preserve the brand. This is the only way to protect the Sullivan name. He paused, a smug smile on his face. The buyer is Everest Holdings. I set my glass down, my heartbeat steady. All eyes turned to me as I spoke, calm and clear. That's interesting because Everest Holdings is me. The room fell so silent you could hear the grandfather clock tick. My father's face faltered, his eyes flickering between doubt and fury. Ethan leapt to his feet, spilling red wine across the white tablecloth. Chloe stared blankly, turning her camera toward me. Wait, you're saying you're the CEO of Everest Holdings? I rose, pulling a silver case from my bag and sliding out a business card etched with Everest's logo, placing it before my father. My real name was never accepted in this company, so I used the alias M. Stone. For the past 10 years I built Everest from nothing. Now, I've come back to buy the very company you once denied me. My father gripped the card, his hand trembling, voice low and sharp. Impossible. This is a betrayal of family. I met his gaze with a cold smile. No, father. This is business. And business doesn't forgive arrogance. In that moment I saw it. The silence of 3 people stunned into disbelief. My father, my brother, my sister. None had ever imagined that the overlooked daughter would be the one holding the fate of Sullivan Tech in her hands. Betrayal. My father, Richard Sullivan, slammed his hand against the table so hard the crystal glass rattled. His face flushed red, his voice a growl. You hid everything from this family, came back just to seize the company? You are no daughter of mine. I stood tall, my gaze unwavering. You can think that, father. But I didn't betray anyone. I only did what you never allowed me to do, prove my real worth. Ethan shot to his feet, his face purple, whiskey spilling across his shirt. You're destroying everything, Kennedy. Everything Dad built, everything I've preserved. I cut him off, my tone icy. Preserved? Or stolen? The room froze. Chloe stopped her live stream, eyes wide. I pulled a folder from my bag and dropped it on the table. Here's the proof. Over the last 3 years, Ethan embezzled at least $300,000 through fake vendor accounts. The money was transferred directly into a Cayman trust. Should I read the transactions out loud by date? Ethan's face drained of color. He lunged forward, but I stepped back calmly. Don't. It's all verified. IP addresses, signatures, even emails sent from your office computer. Lies. Ethan shouted, though his voice shook. My father snapped toward him, fury shifting into doubt. Ethan, say something. My brother pressed his lips tight, unable to speak. His silence was the answer. Chloe burst into tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. No, Ethan, you really did that. Then suddenly she wiped her face, her expression sharpening. She turned to me, calculating. But if you're the head of Everest and this company is yours now, I still have a place in it, right? I could be the face of the brand, the image for the group. I have nearly 1 million followers. You know how valuable that is. I looked at her, torn between laughing and sighing. Just minutes ago she was sobbing, now she was bargaining. That was Chloe, quick to adapt, always seeking the spotlight. If you want to work with me, prove you can take it seriously. Not just holding a phone and posing. She sniffed, forcing a smile. Trust me, sis. I know how to seize an opportunity. Then my mother, Linda, who had sat silently until now, set her glass down. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. Kennedy, I owe you an apology. I turned, for the first time in years, seeing not avoidance in her eyes but genuine remorse. I watched your father dismiss you, your brother overshadow you, and I did nothing. I thought staying silent kept the peace. I was wrong. I left you to endure humiliation, failed to protect you when you needed me most. And now I see I failed as a mother. Her words struck deep. I had braced myself for anger, for hostility, but not this raw admission. I drew in a long breath, holding back emotion. At least you've spoken now, Mom. That's more than all the years of silence. My father shot up, his chair screeching against the floor. Kennedy, I won't let you destroy Sullivan Tech. If I must, I'll take you to court. I replied evenly, you can try. But the deal is already approved by the board, the contract signed, and the press will release it in the morning. What you should decide now isn't how to fight, but whether you want to step down with dignity, or be dragged into the light alongside Ethan's crimes. Richard Sullivan's face shifted from red to pale white. He knew I held every advantage. Ethan stared at the floor, hands trembling. Chloe dabbed at her cheeks, clearly calculating her next move. And my mother, she looked at me with eyes heavy with both guilt and pride. In that suffocating silence, I realized this battle was never just about company ownership. It was a collision between past and present. And this time I was no longer the dismissed child. I lifted my head, locking eyes with my father. I didn't betray this family. I simply refused to be buried under your contempt. Now you must choose. Step aside as the honored founder, or let the world see just how rotten the Sullivan name has become. The silence stretched, broken only by the tick of the clock on the wall. I knew the confrontation had only begun, and the real shock for them was still yet to come. 1 week after that turbulent Thanksgiving dinner, the deal went public. Major newspapers ran the headlines. Everest Holdings had completed the acquisition of Sullivan Tech Solutions, rebranding it as Sullivan Everest Technologies. My face, Kennedy Sullivan under the alias M. Stone, appeared on the cover of a leading tech magazine with the caption, "The woman once dismissed, now in command of her family's empire." At the first press conference, I stepped onto the podium in a tailored black suit, every detail sharp and deliberate. Camera flashes flickered non-stop. I declared before the media, "We will return this company to the top by merging tradition with innovation. Sullivan Everest Technologies will be a symbol of rebirth." Applause filled the room, and I knew I had officially stepped into my new role, not as the daughter once disregarded, but as the captain of the ship. My father, Richard Sullivan, had no choice but to accept. I arranged for him to hold the honorary position of chairman emeritus. His office remained in the main building, his name still etched into company history, but his authority was gone. At the internal signing ceremony, he sat silent, his face closed. I saw in his eyes both resentment and reluctant acknowledgement. He once considered me a shadow, now he had to face me at the top. Ethan's fate was different. I laid 2 options before him: either face public investigation for embezzling $300,000, or repay the full amount, resign, and enroll in an MBA program if he ever hoped to return. For the first time in his life, my brother bowed his head and accepted. The day he signed his resignation, his hand trembled, his face bitter. "You ruined everything for me," he hissed. I answered calmly, "No, Ethan. You ruined it yourself." A month later, I received an email confirming he had enrolled at a business school in New York. With Chloe, I offered another path. I gave her the role of brand ambassador, responsible for connecting the company with media and social networks. She jumped at the chance, instantly spinning the transition into a power family story for her followers. At first, I doubted her abilities. But soon I admitted, she truly knew how to capture a younger audience, reshaping the company's image. At a university event, Chloe stood on stage and said, "My sister is the CEO, I'm the brand ambassador, and that proves women can hold any position in business." From the audience, I smiled quietly. Whatever her initial motives, at least she had found a way to make herself genuinely valuable. My mother changed the most. After that night, she began cutting back on wine, volunteering at a local women's center. One morning she called, her voice unusually steady. "Kennedy, I'm preparing to speak at a workshop about tech education for young women. I want to share your story. May I?" I paused, then nodded into the phone. She had chosen a new path, no longer the woman raising a glass at dinners just to avoid conflict. Within 6 months, Sullivan Everest Technologies had transformed. Product systems were upgraded, the technical team energized again, clients returned. The old offices were redesigned into an open, modern workspace. Walking the halls, I saw belief shining once more in my employees' faces, a faith long lost under old management. At the first shareholder meeting since I took over, every eye was on me. When the quarterly revenue report flashed on the screen, the figure showed 28% growth year over year. Thunderous applause filled the room, and in the back row I spotted my father slowly nodding. He said nothing, but that nod was the greatest acknowledgement I had ever waited for. That night, sitting in my office with Chicago's city lights reflected in the glass, I thought of it all. The years of instant noodles in a cramped San Francisco apartment. The tears when I was called naive. The decision to leave with just $5,000 in my pocket. And now here I was, on the very ground that once rejected me, but this time with power in my hands. I knew the road ahead would still be long with new challenges waiting. But from this day forward, no one could ever dismiss me again. I was Kennedy Sullivan, the woman who turned contempt into strength, failure into a beginning, and a broken family legacy into a new empire. And deep inside, I whispered to myself, this battle I've won, but the next chapter is only just beginning. 6 months after Everest officially took over and restructured, Sullivan Everest Technologies had surpassed every expectation. Consecutive growth reports stunned both the board and the press. Second quarter revenue was up more than 35%. New clients had doubled compared to the previous year. And for the first time in nearly a decade, the name Sullivan was being spoken of as a symbol of innovation rather than stagnation. I regularly traveled between San Francisco and Chicago, bridging the gap between the creative hub and the old management. Not every day was smooth. Many meetings were still tense as those used to the old ways resisted change. But gradually, the efficiency of the new system forced acknowledgement. No one called me naive or a dreamer anymore. Now they called me CEO Kennedy Sullivan. My father, Richard, remained distant at first. He retreated to his honorary office, often just reading the paper or receiving a few old clients. I gave him his space, knowing that for a man used to control, being sidelined was a heavy blow. But one May morning, as I was about to enter a meeting, he called me back. Daughter. His voice was rough, low but clear. I turned to see him by the window, light falling across a face that looked older than before. I read this quarter's report. You did what I never believed you could. You turned the company around in half a year. I have to say, I'm proud of you. I stood frozen. That was the sentence I had waited for all my life, through every year of being pushed aside. Part of me wanted to break down in tears, but I kept my tone steady. Father, I only did what I should have been allowed to do long ago. He nodded faintly, regret flickering in his eyes. For the first time I felt real acknowledgement, not forced, not polite, but genuine. Ethan, after stepping down and repaying the embezzled funds, had gone on to his MBA program. He sent me short emails now and then asking about certain case studies. Though distance remained between us, I saw a shift in him. Less arrogance, less showboating, and perhaps for the first time a true desire to learn. Chloe continued as brand ambassador. Her following skyrocketed as she turned the company's rebirth into a story of women taking charge. Her talks with students and startup communities drew wide attention. But my mother, Linda, changed the most. She cut back on drinking, joined nonprofit organizations, and became a board member for a foundation supporting women in technology. Once she stood before hundreds of high school girls and said, "My daughter was once underestimated, but she proved that perseverance can outshine favoritism. Our duty is to make sure no girl has to go through the same." I sat in the audience, my chest tight with emotion. One evening, the family shared a rare dinner without tension. Ethan spoke about a research project at school. Chloe bubbled with excitement over a new campaign, and my mother smiled as she served food to my father. Richard stayed quiet for a long time before saying, "This family wasted too much time before seeing you, Kennedy. But I admit, without you, Sullivan Tech wouldn't exist anymore." I looked at him and saw that the once steely eyes had softened. I answered gently, "What I wanted was never to erase your legacy, Father, but to carry it forward the right way." At that moment, I realized I had achieved more than a sweet revenge. I had not only claimed power or proven my ability. I had regained the respect I should have had all along. More importantly, I saw my family learning to mend itself, still fractured but for the first time holding real hope. That night, back in my office, gazing out at Chicago glowing bright beneath the skyline, I thought to myself, personal success is indeed a powerful answer, but recognition and reconciliation are the ultimate victory. And I, Kennedy Sullivan, had finally found both. Kennedy's story is a reminder that sometimes the very people bound to us by blood can cause the deepest wounds. Silence in the face of injustice only feeds greed and selfishness, while standing up for the truth helps us reclaim our own worth. In real life, some families are nothing like a home, but instead a place of favoritism and exploitation. Kennedy's lesson is this: be brave enough to set boundaries, don't let family ties become chains, and only keep relationships that bring fairness and respect. What do you think about Kennedy's choices and what she did to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel to keep watching heartfelt real-life stories about family and life.